Now, the Cape Town High Court has sentenced former Western Cape Police Commissioner Arno Lamoer to 8 years in prison. He was convicted of corruption in February.
Well, he admitted to wrongfully and unlawfully issuing a letter validating Daji's good standing on a police-led hit to benefit the businessman's companies. The now disgraced former top cop was arrested in 2015 and initially faced over 100 charges and money laundering to the tune of 1.6 million rand. Lamoer admitted receiving loans, clothing, holidays and use of Daji's petrol cards. He was convicted alongside with 2 police brigadiers. The asset forfeiture unit is reportedly working to recover 67,000 rand that Lamoer received from Daji as part of his loans. 2 of the 8-year sentence will be suspended for 5 years. The Portfolio Committee on Police has welcomed the custodial sentence.
Now, joining us on the line is Paul Ngobeni, a legal expert. Mr. Ngobeni, thank you for your time. Firstly, what sort of legal precedent do you think this sort of ruling has, given the fact that we live in a country that's marred by legions and legions of corruption allegations?
Well, every allegation of corruption is, of course, serious because it goes to the way in which matters of state are being handled. Do we have a capable, competent, developmental state with officials that citizens can repose their confidence in? And when, as in this case, the former police commissioner actually pleads guilty to an act of corruption, that is very disappointing. I'm sure a lot of citizens will be disappointed in a province like the Western Cape, where there are other problems, including gang-related violence and all those kinds of criminal activities. When you have the top cop being convicted of being basically in bed with dodgy characters or criminals, that's a very frightening prospect.
And Mr. Ngobeni, would you rather say that this kind of sentence will then, moving forward, serve as kind of a benchmark, for wrongdoers and the country, especially holding such positions in society?
Well, I wouldn't really put too much emphasis on the sentence, because if you look at it, let's say, for instance, if you compared it with the sentence that former Commissioner J.K. Silebi received, it will seem that Silebi received a much harsher sentence for essentially bribery or whatever allegations that involve small amounts of money. Discounts on shoes and things like those. But what makes this case different is that Mr. Lamoer did fall on his sword. At some point, he changed his plea from not guilty to guilty. In other words, he admitted his wrongdoing. And normally in sentencing, when a defendant falls on his sword and shows remorse and admits that he was guilty, the courts tend to be lenient, or actually they are required to take that into account, because that is the only indication that the person is truly remorseful. When they spare the state the expense of having to prove every allegation, made it easy for the state to now establish that, yes, an act of corruption was committed and the defendant has admitted that he is guilty. So I wouldn't really put too much emphasis on the amount of years that he's received or the sentence as such. Every case is different, and this case was different. I'm just shocked about the small amounts of monies involved, that if our top officials can be involved in acts where they receive small change, and they end up losing an entire career and losing, basically their freedom over small amounts of money. I heard one of the amounts being mentioned was about 67,000 rand, which
now
one would not think it's really anything worth going to prison for.
Now, you mentioned now that he did admit to all these allegations, and therefore, saving the state the time and effort to actually have to build a case against him. Now, with that in mind, would that sort of factor in should he decide to sort of appeal his case? Would that be something feasible in this case?
Well, first of all, if he is going to appeal, he will be appealing only the sentence. He will not be appealing the guilty finding because he has admitted his guilt. So the question of sentencing, sometimes an appeal court does interfere with the sentence. Sometimes they might actually impose a harsher sentence, and sometimes they would actually cut him a slack and maybe reduce the amount of years that he has been given. So I think it will be very difficult for him to appeal the sentence in a case in which he has actually admitted his guilt, his wrongdoing. Because corruption, as you know, some people have gotten 14 years, 15 years for corruption. So being given 6 years is actually not an earth-shaking kind of sentence, if one is to put it that way.
Well, we do hear Mr. Ngobeni. Well, thank you so much for your time. We will have to leave it for there now. Thank you so much for speaking with us this afternoon right here on Afro World. You joining us on the phone line, that was Mr. Paul Ngobeni, legal expert, and packing more details on the ruling made by the Cape Town High Court this afternoon, sentencing the former Western Cape Police Commissioner Arno Lamoer to 8 years in jail over charges of corruption.